Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has said it is set to take new measures to stabilize the Naira against the dollar. Acting Governor of the CBN, Folashoju made the disclosure to State House correspondents after briefing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on what the bank was doing and the halt on the slide on Monday at the State House. He said President Tinubu expressed his concerns about the impact of recent developments in the foreign exchange market, particularly on ordinary citizens. Tinubu assured the president that the CBN is actively working to improve liquidity and stability in the market, including addressing issues in the parallel market. Of course, Nelson Ekujimi, who is a political analyst, is still with us to talk about this. Now, the question is this, Nelson. We do see that the Naira at the moment is about 925 Naira to a dollar. The weakening of the Naira is going to cause serious problems in the Nigerian economy. Unfortunately, that is the current reality we have to deal with. Now, the president introduced the floating of the dollar or the Naira. The idea is that once dollars is accessible, possibly there'll be a stabilization between the price of the dollar to the Naira. But now that the situation is like this, what do you think should be done? How should the Naira be stabilized?
Well, thank you very much once again. The stability of the Naira vis-a-vis will only be determined by our local capacity to our local demands, as a people. So long as we continue to be import dependent, then we'll continue to be at the mercy dollar. There's no two ways about it. Even the measures the CBN says is going to come up with, we wait to see. But one would have expected that with the reduction import refined petroleum products, which has been a major drain on our forex, that the prices of the naira, the dollar demand would have stabilized the naira. But unfortunately, we have seen the reverse is the case. So what could be happened? Some people have attributed it to the role of speculators, but I want to believe strongly that if we start looking inwards, if we start, putting in place measures that will reduce our dependence on sourcing for dollars.
Nelson, are you still with us? Moses, yesterday when I heard the news, especially, okay, I think I heard that news last week by Ipman, when they said that Nigerians should expect an increment in petrol to 720 naira to a liter. And they said that because the naira keeps weakening. And I'm wondering, when the president came and announced that, okay, he was going to deregulate the downstream sector, he was also going to float the naira, meaning that the market is now open. We were thinking that the economy will become
some
stability. But it now it's confusing now. Even the analysts themselves are confusing. In fact, the Ipman president actually said that some importers have stopped importing because they're not getting any profit out of it.
Of course.
You do know. I think we have Nelson back. Nelson, you were saying.
Like I was saying, so long as we continue to that ordinarily we should have the capacity to produce, so long will our dependence on dollar, crash the value of the naira. I think the time has come for us to rethink our orientation as a people and as a government. What are those things we can produce that we need? What are those things we cannot produce? So I think the economy of scale, opportunity cost should come into this regard. One would have expected that with the reduction in the quantity of PMS that is consumed locally and the importation, that the pressure on the naira due to the high demand for the dollar to import PMS would have shore up the value of the naira, unlike what we have now. But some persons have attributed the free fall of the naira to speculators, and that is why the CBN governor has come out to say we are going to put in place measures that will address this. We'll wait to see. But so long as we continue to remain import dependent as a people, so long will our currency to nosedive in relation to the dollar.
Okay, some economic analysts have actually said that the ongoing disparity between the naira to the dollar has further, continuously declined the naira, rather weakened the naira. And they're saying that these are the implications of the naira not having a sustainability with its international counterparts. And within a span of 3 weeks, the naira has experienced a devaluation of almost 100 naira consecutively, which is now 900 and something. Before you know it, will be 1,000 naira to a dollar. So the question is, what are the market forces causing this? That's basically the question. And why does it seem like we're not going to see any reprieve in the next couple of months?
Well, I think the reason why this is so is because maybe we have scarcity of dollars in the system, and that is why the sale of crude oil, the the non-oil exports, the dollars that it has generated, what are we using them for? If companies are just buying the dollar to store up and creating artificial scarcity of the dollar, definitely the dollar will continue to rise. But if people are buying the dollar with three measures put in place to ensure that whatever you take the dollar for is what it is used for, to drive away money speculation, call it that way, then the value of the naira will show up. But majorly, so long as we continue to depend on importation, so long will our demand for the dollar rise. The local industries have to be kick-started, to start production on a massive scale. Research that have been conducted into areas that we can, we have the natural resources, to meet our needs, have to be dusted and, implemented. In that way, we'll reduce the dependence on dollar.
All right.
If running after the dollar the way the naira is running after the dollar now, the naira will show up. But if it's just like a man who is running after a beautiful lady. You know what? Definitely, whatever.
But Nelson, I want to cut you there. You said artificial scarcity of the dollar. Meanwhile, the banks are saying that they literally do not have access to the dollar because the demand is so huge and the supply is extremely limited, especially for the fact that they're getting their supply from the CBN. And since that particular market is open, possibly other private individuals who should supply are not supplying as much. So you're saying there is artificial scarcity, but the banks are saying they don't actually have access to the dollar to meet up with the demand.
No, what I've said here is that for the dollar, the naira crash against the dollar is multifaceted. I've not listed just one reason.
Okay.
I've just said that one could be that artificial scarcity is being created because some persons have bought the dollar or were able to procure the dollar and are not using it for what it was meant for. And when you procure the dollar and you are storing it up for speculation to make profit without productive action taking place, then definitely the naira will suffer. So the question that one is asking now is that the banks, why are they not getting the dollars from the CBN? Is it that we are not selling enough crude oil and making other revenue via our exports? That's the question we should throw to the central bank. If the central bank is not providing enough dollars to the banks, definitely when there's scarcity, we all know what happens when the good is scarce. Those that have some of it will start hiking the price or ordering it in order to sell at a higher profit. So what we are saying in essence is that the banks that don't have dollars now, why are they not having the dollars? What is happening between the banks, the commercial banks, or money banks, as well as the CBN? Because right now, unfortunately for us also, we must not run away from the fact that just this month we have been availed with information that our oil production capacity has dropped to 1.08 million barrels per day, unlike what we were supposed to produce about 3.5 million barrels per day that we're producing in as at May, June, if I'm correct. And we also didn't meet up to our OPEC quota of 1.7 million barrels per day. So if we have this drop in our foreign exchange and our major foreign exchange earner, then they have less dollars. Because if we are producing at 1.7 million barrels per day and we are just able to produce 1.08 million barrels. The gap, that 600 plus, the dollars that could have been, gotten from that is lost. So we need to ask the central bank, how are they able to access dollars to the commercial banks, able to carry out their responsibility, and how supervisory are they of the commercial banks to ensure that those who get the dollar are those, who really need it for business transactions, and not just for somebody who wants to send to these commercial banks to get dollars, and at the end of the day, it does round tripping, like we have always complained when we had a double exchange rate system.
All right. Now, well, the CBN has said that it will flood the market with the dollar. Do you see this helping to stabilize the Naira, or at least giving the Naira some flesh?
Yes, that would help. But in the long run, we need fiscal policy that will address our importation, mechanism. We shouldn't be importing those things we know we use. You recollect that the first administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, when he came into office in 2015, placed a ban on 41 items that foreign exchange will not be made available for. So we need to.
All right, we seem to be having a network glitch there. When you did say the former administration placed a ban on certain items, I remembered one of the items on that list was toothpick. I remember that. One would wonder, truly, were we importing toothpick? It's laughable.
But Maurice, is even like then, despite the fact that he banned the importation of those things, did it actually help?
Yes, was the ban?
Did it help
was
the
there really a
economy?
ban?
Did it actually help the economy? Nelson, are you back with us?
I'm back with you. Yeah.
All right. So you were saying before that glitch occurred.
I was saying that the CBN measure will help in a way, but most importantly, we need to put in place a fiscal policy that will address our dollar demands, such that those things that we need to produce, that we don't need to go, source foreign currency to import into the country, we will do that. In that way, once the local, productive capacity is up and doing, it will reduce our dependence on dollars, and in that way, the value of the Naira will show up. The policy that the CBN is going to put in place will only address the issue from one angle. There are so many other, other side of the issue that, also needs to be addressed by fiscal policy. It's not monetary policy alone.
Okay. All right. So Nelson, this is the situation now. Apparently, Ipman last week said that there is a tendency that petrol would be increased to 729 to a liter, to a liter of petrol, and he said that one of the major reasons is because there's a further decline in the Naira strength. So the question we're going to ask is, should we say that there is a state of emergency when it comes to the Naira and the Nigerian economy, because this traverses through all the sectors that makes what the Nigerian economy is all about? So the question is, how soon should the president's economic team, along with the CBN, do something so that we do not have a situation where we have more persons retrenched from their workplaces? Of course, we do know that salaries are not being increased at this time, and then some small companies begin to close up. As you can see, GlaxoSmithKline has actually stopped its operations within the country. They say it's an unfriendly economic environment. So do you think that we should declare a state of emergency on the Naira and the Nigerian economy, and how soon should the president's economic team put something together to resuscitate it?
That action is already in place. You heard the CBN governor say they have been communicating with Mr. President. And there's nobody who is an economist or who is a living being who is not worried about the situation. That Ipman has said she is going to increase, the price of petrol. Is in sync with economic realities. If I have bought a product at the time I exchange dollar to a Naira for 720 Naira, and today it is now 120 Naira, definitely I cannot sell that product at the same price. It's common market, economics. Somebody doesn't need to go to school to do that. So the government has a responsibility, just like the CBN governor has rightly said. They are implementing policies that will address, these shortfalls immediately. It's not something that they are waiting till tomorrow. Even though the cabinet has not been, fully constituted, I'm sure the government has an economic team in place that are looking at these, indices, and they are going to take measures to address it.
Now, so you seem so certain that there is a team already in place. You're certain that there is a team already in place to sort this out.
There's an economic team. Yes, I've listened to government functionaries speak. Even though the team has not been consulted formally to the Nigerian public, there's an economic team working on these measures. Don't forget, since the advent of this administration, they have come up with some policies. I'm sure you don't expect that those policies are the thinking of just one man, who is Mr. President. There's no government runs like that anywhere in the world. He has a team of advisors who say this is what we do, and even before coming on board, he had his economic plan, and that economic plan was not drawn up by own, because it's not an island of knowledge.
All right.
So what I'm saying in essence here is that the government has a responsibility to address this lacuna immediately. And the central bank, just yesterday has come, look, we are going to do this.
All right.
Like I said,
Nelson,
there are so many ways to a market.
Okay, Nelson,
So
this
lacuna has to be addressed from all fronts.
All right, then. May I interrupt you there? I would like to get your opinion on this now. We do know that the fuel price has gone up from when the subsidy removal was announced. It's gone up from 400 and something, going closer to almost 800 now in some parts of Nigeria, and it still boils down to lack of dollar, because some importers are saying they cannot import because they don't have dollars to import. Now, Labour has said if there is another hike in the price of fuel, there will be an indefinite strike. What's your position on that?
Well, my position on it is that Labour has the right to determine the course of action it wants to take. But as an economist, I'm sure that Labour were in the know that the fuel sector has been fully deregulated. And right now, the determinants of the price of petrol is no more in the hands of government. So I wonder why they are saying, if government increases, they should know, or we have a responsibility to educate our viewers that right now the price of petrol is no longer determined by government, it's determined by market forces. And that is why Ipman is telling that the rate of the dollar presently does not augur well for them to continue to sell at the old rates. Ipman is not an arm of government or an agency of government. Ipman is an individual marketer of the petroleum product. These are businessmen and interests. So one expects that because we have this situation on ground now, I want to believe strongly that those in government are already thinking, how do we address this issue? But don't also forget, like I told you earlier on, fiscal policy has to be put in place to address local production, and the local production talks about the local refineries as well as the modular refineries.
Okay, that's something that
if we have these refineries,
yes,
if we have these refineries working, then the pressure on an
importation
will be greatly reduced.
Now that's something that that is still in the works, or as they say, in the pipeline. Whether or not we'll get to see that this year is a question. But now, CBN said it will. I mean, the headlines today. Well, one of the headlines today said CBN says it will bring its hammer on speculators. Do you think that will work? Do you think that will affect the free fall of the naira against the dollar if CBN goes after speculators? And do they even know these speculators really? Because these are businessmen also.
Well, don't forget that the CBN is the Central Bank of Nigeria. It is an institution. And as an institution, it has its eyes and ears in all sectors of economy of Nigeria. And for the CBN to say we are going to clamp down on speculators, it means that the CBN has some information that you and I are not available, that you and I don't have access to. And if they are making this assertion publicly, I want to believe strongly that they have a mechanism for addressing that. Because when they say they want to clamp down on speculators, it's not that they will start running after speculators here and there. The CBN does not have the powers to do that or the authority to do that. But what the CBN is saying is that we are going to put measures in place that would look like a sledgehammer speculator. So, but as the CBN has made this statement, we'll look at the days ahead and see how this sledgehammer on speculators will transform to shoring up the value of the Naira vis-a-vis the dollar.
All right.
And that we will do that. So really the sledgehammer has fallen on the speculator.
Okay. So Nelson, I need you to patiently help me analyze this line of thought I want to describe to you. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inherited a very dicey economic situation, right, from his predecessor. Now, in this particular development, he knew, or we knew, that fuel subsidy would definitely be removed. But he didn't exclude the fact that other viable sectors can be subsidized so long as it will help the people. Now, do you think that the president wasn't really ready? Because by now, you would have thought that officially he would have constituted his economic team. The removal of fuel subsidy and its impact in the economy, of course, that economic team already knew. And the cushioning effect, the palliative measures would be in place. So while the fiscal policy implementation is underway, while the president is still trying to officially declare his economic team, what happens to the common man in the interim when these market forces are fighting together? Because as it stands, at the end of the day, regardless of how these businessmen see things, it will affect the viable sector of transportation, food, healthcare, and other essential services. So, when will the president do something as soon as possible in the interim before the long haul so that you don't see people literally languishing? Because you're going to begin to experience armed robbery in broad daylight.
Well, Esther,
yes,
armed robbery in broad daylight has always been, in all over the world.
But
so
this will become a daily occurrence with the development of ground now.
Go to New York today or Joburg in South Africa, daylight robbery, takes place. So please don't bring that as an excuse.
Okay, fine.
The truth of the matter is that one has had people say, "Oh, well, put in place palliatives before removing first subsidy." Such persons need to be educated. That to put palliatives in place needs resources, and that resources can only be gotten by freeing up the subsidy regime. Don't forget, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not remove fuel. The fuel subsidy payments allocation was removed from the 2023 budget by the previous administration. The fuel subsidy regime terminated in June. So he made this policy in place, and the only way he can implement this policy effectively is if there is enough revenue on ground. And as we speak, in the last 2 months, the government has told you and I that he has saved over $1 trillion Naira from fuel subsidy.
Okay. Yes.
So it is that savings. It is that savings that will now be used to put in place these measures.
So the question that's what I'm asking you. How soon? Recall that he also requested for about 500 billion naira from the Senate at the time to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal. So the question, why I'm asking this question is this. I do know that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not the one that removed fuel subsidy. I'm very certain about that. We already knew that the expiration date was in June. But the thing is, we thought that something to cushion that effect will already be on standby. We've been hearing about it, but we haven't seen anything. Yes, savings have been done already, but how soon will that be implemented while the Naira further declines and while the market gets more porous for the common man who literally cannot afford possibly 3 square meals? That's the question I'm actually asking.
The answer to your question is that we have started seeing palliatives in place.
Okay, you have seen?
I have seen it here in Lagos.
Okay.
Yes, I have seen it. I have bought a BRT bus, of which I paid half the price. I promised your colleague that I was going to do a survey. And
my name is Moses.
And if you want to, Moses, sorry, please pardon me. I apologize for not knowing your name. Yeah. And like I promised you, I went on public transportation during the week. I bought a bus, a commercial private bus for 400 naira, of which I asked the driver, how much was this bus before? He said they were collecting 500 naira. But because they have been told to, they are now collecting 400 naira. I've been to some local governments, like Apapa local government, I can report authoritatively, buses from, that is Korokwe buses, from Liverpool to Waterside, that, because of the fuel subsidy became 150. Converted to 100 naira due to the intervention of the local government. I can also report to you that Apapa to Ijora, that became 150 naira subsidy remover, due to the intervention of the local government, has become 100 naira. I even had interviews with the drivers as well as passengers, of which I was going to publish on my own website. So I've started seeing it. But most importantly, it is a general policy. And what is the general policy? The policy is that we must move from fossil fuel, which is damaging our economy, which is making life unbearable for us because of the high cost, and go to alternative sources of energy. You talk about electricity buses. You talk about improved electricity in our homes. You talk about CNG to power our homes, and another means of transportation and what have you. This is the way the world is moving to cleaner energy, and that is what we should be doing now, rather than this continuous concentration on PMS that pollutes the environment, that contributes massively to the depletion of the ozone layer. That today Asia has been, has been devastated by flooding and mudslide. That Europe, that used to become cold environment, is now very hot. That NEMA just 2 days ago or yesterday told us that 19 states will be affected by massive flooding.
All right.
These are acts through our own that are contributing to making the world a dangerous place for us to live. And we should move from that aspect of living to a better aspect of living. So one expects that, the CNG buses, train, the use of train, the use of electric buses should be the way to go.
All right, then, Nelson. Okay, Nelson, we will be wrapping up this segment very shortly, but I just want to take you up on something. Yes, there was a message I was supposed to send to you over the weekend on this investigation that you promised me that you would undertake. And I appreciate the fact that you brought it up now. I think I forgot to send that message to you. Now, you said you went ahead to, board buses, interview drivers, and they were complying. That was last week. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Last week. Great. Now, but over the weekend, on the 12th, actually, which was, I think, Saturday or thereabout, there was a report in one of the papers. I'm going to quote the Punch newspaper now. The headline has it that it says, "Why we can't slash transport fares, Lagos bus drivers." This is from the Punch over the weekend after you did your investigation. It also, if you go down, it was talking about commercial bus drivers in Lagos State having failed to comply with the government's directive to reduce transport charges by 25%. Oh well, maybe in the areas that you plied, the bus drivers complied, but in the generality of them are saying they cannot comply because they still get to pay agbiros, money, and then they still purchase fuel at a high price. But anyway, that's a different issue. We'll do our own investigation again later. You and I this time around. But let's leave that one now. Let's talk about something else.
Yes.
Nelson, let's talk about the implication of the CBN's move now to strengthen the Naira. Let's talk about the implication it will have on the international trade and the foreign reserves. What implication would that have? Because that's the topic actually.
The implication it will have on the foreign exchange is that once the CBN is able to access more forex for, importers or people want to do business from abroad, then the value of the naira will come up. But talking about the foreign reserves, don't also forget that fuel subsidy has been removed, earning more money, from the sale of crude oil. That is if we can up our ante with regards to production to meet our OPEC quota. That is left in the hands of you and I, the government, to do that. Then talking about the vehicles you mentioned, yes, even the Lagos State Minister of Transportation, through the permanent secretary, went out and they partial compliance. That is a fact that we have a disorganized transportation system. I was in your studio and that Oshodi to Abule Oja or Songo, you can board it in the morning for 200 naira. But when rush time, the same vehicle you boarded on the same journey for 200 naira in the morning, in the evening they could say 1,000. System is disorganized. So government can only appeal to the transporters. And even the NURT or the park agency in Lagos has come out, through its chairman to say that they are reducing the park fees for the vehicles. But you and I know very well, how many of those vehicles do we even have a data of the commercial vehicles on our road? The answer is absolutely no. We see a lot of painted in commercial colored vehicle, and we see a lot of private vehicles that are also doing, commercial business. So the ball is now in the courts of the government to put in place measures that will take us away from fossil fuel. And in that way, we won't need to have any longer. When I know I'm using CNG or electricity to charge my car or my bus, then our cost of transportation will definitely go down. But so long as we continue on the path of PMS, which is determined by international prices, so long as we continue to cry that the prices is becoming unaffordable, we need to move away from this fossil fuel to cleaner energy to power our vehicles and other means of transportation, as well as our homes and offices.
All right.
To make a better
Thank you very much.
environment for all of us.
Thank you very much, Nelson Ekujimi, who's a public affairs commentator. We appreciate you staying with us on the program today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, have a beautiful day. All right, let's go to business now. Oil marketers have stated that the foreign exchange crisis in Nigeria and the recent implementation of a 7.5% value-added tax on automotive gas oil, popularly called diesel, had pushed up the cost of the commodity to between 900 naira and 950 naira a litre in many states. The development has made local manufacturers say that the situation may lead to the closure of some factories and job losses. Now, speaking under the aegis of the Natural Oil and Gas Suppliers Association of Nigeria at a press briefing in Abuja, the marketers explained that their inability to access the United States dollars was impeding their ability to import diesel. The national president, Nogasa Benef Korie, told journalists that the cost of diesel was around 650 naira a litre before the federal government introduced a 7.5% VAT on the commodity. Officials of the Nigeria Customs Service and Federal Inland Revenue Service had confirmed this in Abuja, stressing that AGO was not exempted from the payment of VAT based on the VAT Modification Order 2021. Also, in another business story, following the tumbling of the Naira at the parallel markets in recent times, the Central Bank of Nigeria has started introducing foreign exchange intervention measures aimed at clamping down on currency speculators in the foreign exchange market. Acting Governor of the CBN, Folashodun Shonubi, made the disclosure to State House correspondents on Monday at the presidential villa after briefing Mr. President on what the bank was doing to halt the slide of the Naira. He stated that Tinubu expressed his concern over the effects of the recent development in the foreign exchange market, particularly on average Nigerians. According to Shonubi, The volatility of the Naira in the parallel market is not solely driven by economic factors, but also speculative demand. The Apex Bank governor noted that while he will not disclose specific details of the proposed intervention measures, he warned speculators that the proposed measures could potentially lead to significant losses for them. He disclosed that the primary purpose of his presence at the presidential villa was to reassure the president that the CBN was taking decisive measures to address the concerns raised, and he expressed confidence that the measures being implemented would yield positive outcome within a few days. All right, so that's what we have from the world of business, and we will take a break. When we come back, we'll go into entertainment and sports.